of the Farrington Democratic Club, and we are live in the gathering place and also on Zoom, and we're recording this. So this will be available in the future for people who want to see it. Just a couple of reminders if you... Yeah, we're starting. That's okay. Excellent. She's glad to hear it. If you would turn off your cell phones, please. And when it's time for questions or comments to the speaker, if you would wait for the microphone, we have someone who takes the microphone around, because we've learned in the gathering place, and you probably have too, that even people who say that they have a loud enough voice that they don't need a microphone, we don't have loud enough ears, and some of us do need the microphone. Okay. So we are very relaxed at this point in late April with the mask policy. So some people choose to wear it, some people choose not to. And at this point, that's really your choice. We are hoping that if the COVID situation continues to decrease, that when we return in the fall, because this is our last meeting for this part of the year, in the fall, we are hoping we will have the wine and cheese in that corner before the meetings. Of course, we stopped when everybody had to be in a mask, but the meetings go much better with wine and cheese and cookies. So the first quick order of business is that we're going to elect officers for the next club year, for the 2-year term that begins on July 1st. And this is going to be very quick because there's one candidate for each office. And and Chris Kamen, our vice chair, who is sitting with the computer here, headed the nominating committee. And so I'm going to read out the slate of nominees that that committee is proposing, and then nominations will be accepted from the floor. So the nominee for chair for the next 2 years is me. The nominee for vice chair is Lynn Whitener, who is back there waving and who has been a door greeter for the last couple of years. The nominee for secretary is Mary Cullen Carroll, who's back there also waving in the required red uniform. And the nominee for treasurer is Tina Graybard, who is back there and didn't get the memo. Okay. So are there any nominees from the floor? Very good. Then there's a second. All in favor? Okay, very good. We're in. Okay, thank you. Now for the main, Now for the main event. We are delighted to welcome Sue Blalock, who was one of the architects of Chatham's Get Out the Vote effort and is now the new chair of the Chatham County Democratic Party. So we've set this up both as a presentation from Sue, but about her analysis of Chatham County voting patterns, but also as a conversation, which is why we have make it easier for you all to see each other, so that you can talk with Sue about your suggestions and your feedback about where the Chatham County Democratic Party should go from here to encourage even more Democratic votes in 2024. So Sue, thank you so much for coming to Farrington to talk to us, and the floor is yours. Also the microphone.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you all for coming. I was told, in preparing for this, and I was actually asked to do this presentation, before the election, and just coming and talking about the Get Out the Vote effort last fall. And then if I happen to be, elected, unless there was a, big write-in campaign at the end, then I would have chair there now. So at any rate, I was definitely told that this would be a conversation, but to prepare a few slides, sort of to stimulate, conversation, focused around how Chatham did it in 2022 and what we need to do in 2024. So I've got about 20 slides here. They shouldn't take more than 30 minutes, and that should leave a fair amount of time for discussion, because that is the most important part of this. So I've got a clicker here. So unless folks, I'm starting out with, how Chatham did in 2022, and unless someone has been, in a coma for the last 6 months and, just woke up and said, oh, I have to get up to the center to hear this presentation, we did very, very well. We did very, very well. Turnout in, whoops. Yeah, and now I'm going, it's not going backwards.
Just have to talk really fast.
Well, you can try the laptop.
Okay, thanks. There we go. Okay. So in Chatham, you probably have seen this figure before. The turnout in Chatham was about 66%. That compares to 51%.
That's all parties.
That's all parties. That's overall. And then Democratic turnout was even higher, 70%. That's in Chatham as a whole, Democratic turnout. Remember that number, for a second, because this is how West Williams did. And look at that number right there. That is Democratic turnout in West Williams, nearly 80%. So, kudos for all the hard work out here. And what this slide shows the turnout in midterm elections, 2014, 2018, and then 2022. But the most important number that I wanted to emphasize was right there, 80% turnout essentially in West Williams. So amazing. So, one of the things I wanted to say at the very beginning was, how did we do it? We really did it together, because it just wasn't CCDP out doing things. There were a lot of different groups. We did things with CCDP, Neighbors on Call was out here and did a couple of big canvases, one here, right here in West Williams, another one in Siler City. The Moms for Del Turner were, really active and probably, helped to push Dell over the finish line. And so just lots of groups. So I'm going to be focusing on CCDP, but, we certainly recognize that there were lots of other groups out doing good things. So we did it as a team. So this slide shows, our, basically our strategy. And, it's kind of hard to see and then make sure you're being heard at the same time. We divided, we focused first of all on Democrats and unaffiliated voters. So it's really important that we included unaffiliated voters, because if you don't know, there's more unaffiliated voters in Chatham than there are Democrats. That's true in North Carolina as well. So you can't ignore unaffiliated voters. We focused on people who had Democratic support scores of 50 or above. There were people who we know lean Democratic. We thought that if we could get them to the polls, they're likely to vote for Democratic candidates. So we focused on Democratic voters and unaffiliated with Democratic support scores of 50 or above. Then we the Democratic support scores range from 0 to 100. So a score of 90 or above is what a lot of folks call a true blue Democrat. Probably most of the folks in this room are, 90 or above. As they go down, you become less, true blue. And so 50 is that, middle where we think that people, lean towards the Democratic side. And then below 50, we didn't focus on them because we thought if they got to the polls, they were less likely to vote for Democrats. So we didn't, the lower they go down on that scale, we don't want to necessarily remind them that the polls are open. That was kind of the thinking. And I see hands, and I don't mind taking questions as I go along. So
I can just repeat if you just repeat the question, because that microphone, the Zoom audience cannot hear them. So if you repeat the question.
okay, sure, Tony.
The scores come from a thing called a database called Vote. And if you just comment a little bit about how.
Okay, the question for the folks on Zoom is, how are these scores in Vote Builder, the Democratic support scores, determined? And that is, there's not a reassuring answer to that, because it's like asking Colonel Sanders, what is in the secret recipe. My understanding is that Vote Builder was initially developed by the Democratic Party, but then it was made proprietary. And they don't give us the predictive equations that go into that. And there's a lot of scores in Vote Builder that are the same way. And in my professional career, I've actually taught about measurement. And so I'm always suspicious, and I'm especially suspicious when I don't know where numbers, come from. The Democratic support scores, I've looked at these in a variety of ways. And, when I talk to people, they match up, pretty well. I've been out canvassing a lot of people, and the Democratic support scores, I trust that they're, for the most part, reflect, that continuum. There are other numbers in there that I do not go by. And I've had, many arguments with folks over that. But some of them I don't trust, but I do trust these support scores. Okay. And then I'm addicted to diet soda, so I need to swallow this. So then we also crossed that support score to get our 4 groups. We crossed that with voting consistency. So our consistent voters up there, they were people who had voted in 2020, 2018, and 2016. And so we labeled them, consistent voters. And that was actually a metric that we made up, because there were scores in Vote Builder that I did not trust for voter turnout. So that's how we defined voter consistency. And then people that we label inconsistent voters, they were just people who missed one of those elections, those 3 elections that I just named. Or, inconsistent voters, a little bit of not the best label, but we never could come up with a better one, because it could also include new residents, where we don't have a complete voter history for, and they can also include younger voters who weren't old enough to vote in 2016. But that's how, that's how we did it. So we've got the 4 groups. Together, there's about 30,000 people there. And we set a goal of getting 24,000 of them to the polls. So that's the 24,000 that you saw all over the place. That number came from sort of 2 places. One, past turnout in past midterm elections, so what was sort of realistic, and then also looking at the results from previous elections and how many votes it would take to win, for all of our candidates to win. And sometimes, I forget to mention Chris, in this, when I'm talking about this score, that goal of 24,000. But Chris and I, were to a large extent the ones who, looked through the numbers and came up with that goal, together, and then presented it to the officer team for their approval. So I wanted to give a shout out to Chris. This slide, so then what we did was we divvied that 24,000 up among the precincts. And I'm going to turn around here for just a second if I can. Whoops. Fat fingers. Okay. Maybe I won't try to point anymore. Up at the top, so this is how many votes we wanted from each precinct. So what you can see up at the top is what the goal was in West Williams, and that was about 2,700. So we would have sent a little email to Nancy Jacobs saying that we need about 2,700 people to get out the vote in West Williams. I'm over in Man's Chapel, so we would have told Mike Hobbs that we need to get out of Man's Chapel about 4,800 or so. So after he picked up himself up from the floor, he said we'll get to work on it. So everyone had their goals. And you can see that there's a big variety among the different precincts, because we've got some small precincts and we've also got some precincts that are pretty, red. So there's not a lot of Democrats there to get out to the polls. Kinds of get out the vote activities. I think everyone is pretty, familiar with these, because probably a lot of people in here were, volunteered and participated in some of these. Phone banking. I forget. I think I remember that we made over 8,000, phone calls. Dave Brown single-handedly made 2,000. And door-to-door canvassing, shout out to Caroline Deegan and Jim Foster, who really put a lot of that together. Poll greeters, I gained whole new appreciation for poll greeters, because, I was always floating around during the get out the vote season, and I would wander by, and, you couldn't get into, at the community college up here, you couldn't get into the polls without someone coming up and politely asking if you'd like a blue ballot, and sometimes getting a little negative feedback in the process. So, letters, postcards, community events. We provided IT support to the candidates, because they also use Vote Builder, and, they come in not knowing, how to use it. So we provide the software and also the technical support. So I'll just stop there. So we had a wide variety of, get out the vote activities. So once the votes started rolling in, each morning, the Board of Elections puts into a database that hooks up with Vote Builder who has voted that day. Not how you voted, not the candidates that you selected, but whether you voted. So we were able to go in and each day say, oh, and it started out as a trickle, as the mail-in ballots. Oh, 5 people, voted in West Williams, only 2,695 to go. And literally, that's what we were doing, because we just had these slivers, and then they just started filling up. So, what you can see here is that darker blue are the actual number of votes, that we achieved. So overall, what you can see, I'm afraid to point with this because it messes things up. I'll go over here. Right, I'll point that way. We had over 90% of the goal, which, I was very happy with, because we didn't know how good of a goal we were setting. So I thought the fact that we got 90%, that was pretty darn good.
So did you just like get when the person has sent in an absentee ballot, or what's all included in
Every single day. Oh, I'm sorry. Does the information come into Vote Builder, just during the early voting period, or is it mail-in voting period? That's my sense of the question. It starts coming in the minute that the Board of Elections starts opening those mail-in ballots. So it would come in, just as a trickle at first, but yeah, the mail-in was there as well. And after Election Day, because some, ballots come in after Election Day, there's a little bit of a grace period there. Those would continue to, to come in. So I just wanted to point up here to West Williams, which is at the very top. And I'm going to tell a story on Nancy Jacobs, because I was over at the polls here towards the end of early voting. And I said, boy, Nancy, West Williams is really doing a great job, go for it. And Nancy looks at me seriously and she says, we are, I don't think that you set our goal high enough. Honest to God. And I don't know if she'll remember, but I remember. And so be prepared for a larger goal next time. But actually, you came very close to meeting that goal. And so I think the goal was pretty well set. So this slide shows the turnout in each of those target groups. So, group 1 and group 2, they were the consistent voters. So as you can see up here, most of them voted. And in groups 3 and 4, those were the inconsistent voters. And another person asked me towards the end of early voting, he said, are you surprised that these are so low? Are you surprised that those are not higher? And I said, and the answer remains the same now that it was back then. We didn't know what to expect, because I don't think that anyone had really gone at it with this level of granularity. We certainly expected inconsistent voters to be lower than consistent voters, but how low, I don't know. So going forward, I think the most important thing is, now we've got kind of a baseline. So we know a little bit better what to expect. And there's lots of room for improvement. Lots of room for improvement. Yeah. Group 3 are inconsistent voters, and group 3 are the true blue inconsistent voters. So, boy, we need to get them to the polls, because we're almost certain that if they get to the polls, they're going to vote for Democrats. So, that's one thing that we're going to be looking at, closer and trying to strategize around. I do not. And the question was if there's a racial breakdown. And I could generate it, because I think I've got the numbers, but I don't think I have done it. And I forget the previous question that I answered. The question was, what was group 3? So group 3 was the inconsistent voters who were true blue Democrats. So I'm now turning to 2024 and just sort of starting to think about what we need to do in 2024. And, two things that I want to highlight. I think number one, we have to start now, and we have to prepare for the unknown. In terms of starting now, I think that one place where we could have done a little bit better, last year, is that we were always I think we got a little bit of a late start. We were always kind of scrambling, and we were always feeling like we were a little bit, behind the curve. And I think that's to some extent the nature of the beast. No matter what you do in preparation, you're always going to be scrambling at the end, I bet. But we can start now to avoid that and control it as much as possible. So in preparing for the unknown, I've got several slides like this, and this is sort of in anticipation of a question like, well, why do we have to work so hard in Chatham? We're so democratic, we're so blue already. Why do we have to work so hard? Well, this is a map, and this is a cool site. If you just Google North Carolina State Board of Election results, something like that, you'll be able to generate tons of maps like this in a little interactive tool that they have. This is the map that you'll find there for almost all of the candidates in contested races that were, partisan last fall. And obviously the blue is where the Democrat won, and the red is where the Republicans had the majority. And so if folks don't, West Williams is up there. It's, let me just try for fun this. Let me get my, okay. West Williams is right there. For folks who don't know, that huge precinct there, that's Pittsburgh right now. So, you know, we've got this, our population density is up here in the northeast corner, and that's what makes Chatham blue. But, you know, I really think that, you know, we're kind of on the front lines. You know, I said, you know, the other day that I feel like we're in a war for the soul of this nation, a battle for the soul of this nation. That's what Biden always says, and I believe it. And this to me is the front lines. You know, this is where we are. So we've got lots of work in the southern precincts and in the western precincts. There's going to be tons of growth out there in Siler City, Moncure, where they're bringing, that's VinFast. You know, there's going to be tons of growth, and we need to get in there and start organizing now, I think. And, you know, I say that this is most of the candidates. There was one candidate whose map looks a little bit different. One candidate, Chris is smiling. Chris, look. Chris saw the slides. Oh, that's not fair. That's Sheriff Mike. You know, and I call that the Sheriff Mike effect. So, you know, these are East and West Siler City over here. And I'm going to see if I can, I think I may have this mastered. I just really have to be careful. That's New Hope right there where Jordan Lake is. So no other Democrat picked up those precincts, but, you know, Sheriff Mike's did. So what I think I need to do is get out and I'll go over there and talk to Sheriff Mike and, you know, find out what his special sauce is. And whenever I've mentioned that to folks, you know, people will tell me that they have an idea of what that is. And maybe, you know, folks have an idea here as well. But I do want to sit down and talk with him because his map looks different than anybody else's. I'm reaching close to the end of these. You know, what about the 9th congressional district? You know, I've thought a lot about the 9th, you know, congressional district because I was, you know, actually the second vice chair, you know, in the 9th congressional district. And, you know, that was the map for the 9th congressional district that we got thanks to, you know, thanks to gerrymandering. And we're now represented by Richard Hudson. You know, Trump endorsed Richard Hudson, which doesn't make me happy. You know, I actually have looked at the numbers there, and you know, Democrats in these particular counties outnumber Republicans. You know, slightly. So, but the difference in here is that their unaffiliateds lean right. That's the difference. So, and it didn't help that. I'm going to see, I'm getting very cocky with this now. You know, that's us, you know, with the highest turnout in the state. Of the other, of the precincts that are shown here, or the counties that are shown here, these two that are blue, that's Hoke, that's Cumberland, they had the lowest turnouts in the 9th. So, so we have Richard Hudson. But this is sort of the uncertainty that, you know, right now we're in the 9th. Are we going to be in the 9th congressional district come election day? We don't know. And I actually was on, had a chance. I was on just a little bit of downtime on a call that Jonah Garson was also on. And I said, you know, I just asked him quickly as an aside, you know, what's the deal with the maps? And he said, well, you know, obviously if the Republicans have an opportunity to redraw them, which they might, and it's to their advantage, they'll redraw them, and they'll redraw them at the last possible minute so that we had the least time to prepare. So, you know, what we do with that kernel of knowledge, I'm not exactly sure, but we certainly need to try to prepare for the unexpected. And I don't have the answer to exactly how we do that.
So, previous slide, is that based on voter registration or voting about the state? What's that based on?
Oh, this was, oh boy, that's a good question. Is this based on voter registration? This is based on election results. But the reason I say that's a good question, you know, this is an interactive tool. So what race I was looking at, I'm not exactly sure. But I suspect that a county or two might flip, but it probably doesn't make a ton of difference which candidate it is. But no, these are the voting results across the state. That's a good. Oh, the comment was I would bet on state senator, and that's probably the answer because that would be the only one that came across, I think, with all of the counties in there. So thank you. This is Erica Lindemann actually goes to, and I think that you know something about this as well, Vicki, because when I asked Erica, she mentioned you as well. But Erica Lindemann goes to the Board of Election, the Chatham County Board of Election meetings each month, and she's done that for the past couple of years and reports back to the officers just so that we know exactly what's going on. And I think that Vicki does that on behalf of the League of Women Voters. So there's two bills that are in committee right now that we need to be aware of. And Erica said, don't panic, everybody, because they might not pass. So this is just a heads up that they're in committee. House Bill 303 would reduce early voting one-stop period from 17 days to 8 days. So if that does pass, it's going to be a lot of educating that we're going to need to be doing that. It's going to be different this time. The rules have changed. House Bill 304, and I think I'll go ahead and read a lot of this, removes the mail-in ballot grace period and requires that all civilian mail-in ballots be received, not just postmarked, by 7:30 on election day. Voters would no longer be able to turn in their mail-in ballots at early voting sites. There's additional BOE reporting requirements, and also requires that all civilian mail-in ballots received by 5 p.m. on election day be counted that day, and not the way that it's currently done at supplemental Board of Election meetings. This is actually called the voter integrity bill. And I don't know if anyone's been in the room where, I've heard Robert Reeves say that the nobler the name of the bill, the worse the content is going to be. So these are clearly voter suppression bills. So just know that, these are potentially coming down the pike, and we're going to have to get out and talk to people and make sure they know what the rules are.
Now that our House is now flipped Republican, it was this comment about this bill is not likely for coming through before that happened or after?
Chris just asked, given that the Republicans now have a supermajority in both the state Senate and the state House, is it, more likely that these will be passed than it was before? And Vicki, can you respond to that at all? Because I honestly don't know. I think I'm going to stop there. I honestly don't know.
So is it likely these are going to pass? I don't know if I'm going to review it. It doesn't look good. I don't know. I think part of it though depends on the public output. Because if this is extreme voter suppression, in every way they can get their hands on the lever. So the extent to which people probably write to newspapers and call and talk to radio stations, if everyone does that anymore, is probably our best hope, unless it gets on. That's the other thing, unless it gets on MSNBC and Twitter, and people just, when people flame, sometimes things change.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give this to Tina.
I just have a question about 304. Does this not impact heavily military overseas?
No, because it's my sense that it's only the civilian.
Well, then is you've got civilians that live overseas as well. That they may, they're covered by, civilians are covered by special.
Civilians are covered by special mail-in rules also.
Okay.
It's overseas civilians, the comma act, that's written here, but it's the military and civilians who live overseas have different rules. And there's federal laws that govern how all of that is done. And it's
Okay.
also pretty minuscule. The state, but
Well, not military.
military overseas.
Okay. I've got just a couple more slides here. Okay. But I'm definitely getting towards the very end. So just looking forward, some of the things I'm going to be going on a listening tour of the county, and especially getting down and talking to the precinct leaders down in the southern precincts and out in the west. We'll be establishing get out the vote goals for the coming year. One of the things that we're going to be working on, and I'll be working with the communications team, is really getting a comprehensive communication strategy that identifies core values, critical issues, and key messages, and make sure that all of our messaging is consistent and coordinated and on target, and so that having the most impact. And then the final thing, if no one has stumbled onto Simon Rosenberg, he has a website that's called the Hopium Chronicles. And I've just been really impressed. He's an old time, not younger than me, but still old time, political activist that goes back to the Clinton years. And he talks about this. One of his major premises is that basically that Republicans do a lot. They're louder than us. They're just so loud. And I would add, they're not constrained by the truth, which gives them an advantage. I don't know that he said that, but he has this idea of, he says that we need to get loud, that all the data are on our side. Even if you look at the economy, it's better when Democrats, are in control. So all the data are on our side, but we just need to be loud. And he talks about information warriors for democracy. And so that's one thing that I'm going to be talking about. Would it be possible to create this network, of information warriors for democracy, in Chatham, so that we can really be loud and, compete with, a lot of the, stuff that we're hearing from the other side. So at any rate, I'm about to wind down. And one thing that, when Liz was first, said that she was, leaving, and we were talking about whether I might, potentially be interested in the position, I said, well, one thing that, I'm never going to do is, I'm a public health person, by profession, I would never get up and do, this, donation appeal. So here I am. I would never do that. And so here I'm standing here, and and this is the donation appeal. Clearly, and you all know that everything that we do takes resources. And one thing, and this comes from Brittany Sandifer, if folks can consider being a monthly donor, that really helps us a lot, because it cuts down on fundraising resources, the resources that we have to devote to fundraising. And it also allows us to plan, better in advance. We know what's coming in and what's going out. I'll leave it at that. If anyone's interested in being on the fundraising committee, Brittany Sandifer lives right here in West Williams. And we're always looking for, other volunteers as well. So that's all I've got.
So Sheila Beaudry, who is attending via Zoom, and she had a comment from earlier. She said that in 2020, it took 11 days for her mom's ballot to reach the BOE in her county, even though she lived only a mile away. It went to Greensboro and then back to her county. Her vote didn't count.
Oh, goodness. And even with the current rules.
Yeah, even with current rules. Yep.
You can't do the limbo under there.
I used.
Hi, I have a suggestion. If I get a comment, an email, a phone call, or whatever, and it says, make sure you contact your congressman, or make sure you let blah, blah, blah know. I'm much better if it says, make sure you let name,
Oh,
phone number, email. We want you to contact the newspapers, name, phone number, email, whatever. I'm much more likely to do that if I don't have to look it up.
absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think we should be sending out this information in a card file to everybody who is a Democrat or everybody who wants one, just with all of the Democratic office holders and those who aren't, the ones, so that we know who to get mad at and how to get in touch with them and get rid of expel our anger.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor or chairperson?
Sue, is it?
Okay. So I wear hearing aids and I may have missed this comment. I'm wondering, I mean, it's a wonderful list of goals. Do we work in sync with the state Democratic Party? Do we have a uniform message? Or is each area quite different? How does that work?
Boy, I'm probably not in a very good position to answer that right now, and I apologize. It's probably better to say you don't know than to make stuff up. We've got a whole new leadership team at the state level. So I think how things have operated in the past, may change as well. And, it's an exciting leadership team, full of, energy. Are you familiar with Anderson Clayton and Jonah Garson, Elijah King, Kim Hardy? I mean, an excellent group. And, we'll certainly be, I know that I can say from the last, election that I was, really involved with, that we did make, many of our own materials and, we did, chart our own strategic path, but yet there was certainly, guidance coming from the state as well. And how to be this time, I really probably shouldn't go any further because I really don't know.
Can I pop in and answer that and also respond to your other thing?
I don't mind that at all.
I think this new leadership team is the best thing that's happened in the state in as many years as I know about. And I've actually started giving money to the state party, which I would never do before because who knows what they were doing with it. And it just, so I think that coordinating with them is something that they're going to want. And she mentioned Jonah Garson, who's the first vice president, I think, who's from Orange County.
Yeah.
And so
Great.
I think there's the possibility of really productive communication. And the other thing, in return to in regards to contact information, I know you were making that as a suggestion to her, and I think it's really good. But on our club's website, we have every phone number and every email address. We don't have Twitter handles yet, but for everybody from Joe Biden all the way down through. Okay. You're saying cards. Okay. Okay. I'm just saying that it is available as a resource for those of you who, I hear you want paper. Got it. She's a true blue.
Ted, I'm coming.
Hi there. Thank you. I absolutely agree with you. We're not loud enough. A couple of meetings ago, we had a congressperson here and she was talking about the gun legislation. Here's what I did. I called the three Republican sponsors of that bill. And I only got through to two people. Third never answered. And I said to them, I'm keeping track of your congressman who sponsored this bill. And if they ever run for statewide office, I'm going to do my best to see that they get defeated. And of course, the woman said to me, that sounds like a threat. I said, no, it's not a threat. It's a response to what the congressperson has done. And I think we have to call these people out by name. And do it a lot. Dick Durbin called out Clarence Thomas about 6 months ago when there was a school shooting. He called him out on national television, that he was partly responsible for that because he stopped the city from banning assault weapons. And I think Democrats have to keep talking about these people by name. There was an article in the paper how happy they were that we were expanding Medicaid, and the two jerks were up there smiling. And how many people died in the last 10 years because they did nothing? And you have to keep saying that.
I think Berger said that at one time said that they'd expand Medicaid over his dead body. So, now
There are plenty of dead bodies out there.
And now they're taking credit for expanding Medicaid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Democrats seem to let him get away with it. And that's why I'm a disgruntled Democrat. And, Chatham County has always done well. I worked with the Chatham County Party for years, but it's the rest of the state that, nothing, how did we lose this congressional seat? How did Phyllis get elected? It's absurd. But I do appreciate your work. Thank you.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an uphill battle for sure.
Bert Bowe is on Zoom, and he asks, do you think the media and others are doing a good enough job at insisting that the NC House Republicans explain in detail why HB 303 and 304 are needed? What demonstrated problem does the legislation solve?
Again, I haven't heard much of this in the media. Have you heard much about it in the media? Not much. So no, I don't think they're doing a good enough job. Oh, well, I mean, my response would be that the further it goes, the harder it is to stop. You have to nip these things in the bud. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion.
You can have a smaller question.
A small question. Are you suggesting a monthly contribution to our county Democratic Party or the state?
I'm actually making the pitch for the county. Yeah, and what Brittany said that
I thought so, but I wanted to clarify.
Oh, thank you.
You then said
Definitely, thank you.
Okay.
And what Brittany said was, even, I don't know if I said this before, but even if it's like $10, it doesn't have to be an awful lot, but it allows us to plan and cuts down on our expenses.
Obviously, the county is growing a lot. Does the Democratic Party get a list every month of all the new people who've come to the county, and are they contacted? I know that that's done in here, but that's something. This county could turn red in 10 years if we're not careful.
Yep. Yeah, we do. And we get a list of the registered voters. So what we get is from the Board of Elections. And we do contact them with welcome postcards right now, I think the same way that you all do out here in West Williams. And I know that North Williams is really good about doing that as well. Once we get things a little bit more organized, because right now we're trying to get, the community center out there really going on all cylinders. And we're going to have 60,000 neighbors in the next 10 years. I think it's a 10-year projection. It might be 20 years when Chatham Park, builds out 60,000 people, right across the street from the engagement center.
This is what you carry.
So what, we're talking about, in addition to those postcards, of actually, using that as an opportunity to invite people over, once a month for cookies or something, and having a speaker there and really introducing them to the party. So going beyond, just what we're doing right now. And I would expect that to happen within the next, maybe in the fall. Maybe in the fall, because it's something that we're seriously, talking about right now. And also using that as an opportunity to get more volunteers as well.
Yeah, that was a good point about the influx of people. Aren't the precincts supposed to have similar numbers of people in them? And do we need more precincts if we get influx of all these people?
Well, right now we've got 16 precincts, and at the border right now it was just approved at the Chatham County Board to split both Pittsboro into 2 precincts and then Mans Chapel into 2 precincts. So that's almost certain to go through. So by this time next year, we'll have 18 precincts, and they are supposed to have, relatively comparable numbers, but that's really hard when you get out into the rural areas, because there's certainly variation in the size. Mans Chapel has, 10,000 people. I mean, it's just a huge precinct right now, and Pittsboro is not very far behind. They'll probably be splitting Pittsboro again with Chatham Park coming in. So, and that will, once they split the precincts, then that will require more organizing, because, we'll have to find precinct chairs and vice chairs for those and get them organized as well.
Since Chatham County did so well on getting out the vote, are other counties coming to you and saying, what did you guys do? What should we be doing? How can you help us? Or are we just patting ourselves on the back?
It's kind of interesting, because certainly, if Liz were up here, then I think that a lot of folks have reached out to her to ask, sort of what the special sauce is. And I was actually, on the phone, I think it was yesterday, with a person, and I'm not even going to remember his last name, but with the, state board of, some kind of liaison with voter protection. It was related to the Board of Elections openings right now. So I think it's a Kaysen. But anyway, he oversees the boards of election. And one of the things that he said to me was, Chatham had the best, strategic plan in the state as far as he was concerned. So, he's not in a position to replicate it, because that's not his job. But I suspect that people will be reaching out for some guidance.
I have concerns about locally in the fact that we dodged a bullet for the school board with Dale Turner. And given the picture of the map and what that is about and what's going on nationwide of capturing things at the local level, what more can we do? Have we started to identify candidates that are strong next go around? Because that to me is one of the biggest fears for our county.
I absolutely agree that we definitely dodged a bullet with Dell's race, and how close it came is only going to embolden them. So they're going to be back, and the thing down in Charlotte, with a person who looks like a Democrat, and then having the epiphany and deciding that she's a Republican after she's elected. if it can happen in Mecklenburg, it can happen here. And one thing that I'm wrestling with, and again, there's so much that I don't know, it's good that I know that there's a lot that I don't know. But right now, we don't really take sides in primaries. Well, if someone's kind of a closet Republican and it, you kind of need to be taking sides in primaries. So that's something that we're going to be, definitely talking about and figuring out. And there's one of the things that I think that I am good about is kind of knowing what I don't know and turning to, people with more experience and putting heads together and coming up with a solution. But, the school board is nonpartisan. And yeah. And I'm so big on, my two big issues, well, there are several, but, education and healthcare. Education and healthcare are usually what I say is my two big issues. And what's happening to public education, I don't know how, last night they had a group that Brittany belonged to, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it's a public schools first, something like public schools first. And, what's happening with these charter schools, and as I understand it, what happened with this candidate, down in Mecklenburg is related to the charter schools. That, she's got some conflicts of interest there, that's just what I've heard. And, I just worry about, well, if folks haven't seen, there's bills over there being considered right now that would underfund again, public schools and give these huge vouchers to the charter schools. So, so yeah, that's just, now I've forgotten the question. Now I've started rambling and I've forgotten the question, but, yeah, the school board, Moms for Liberty will be back. They might be back disguised as a Trojan horse. I don't know. But we need to think about that and be smart about it. I'll just stop there. But I share the concern for sure.
So,
but Republicans don't want an educated, population. That's part of what it's all about.
I'm going to give Jean the last question and then just do a little wrap up.
I do wonder about the Hispanic population in Chatham County. How do they vote, or are they citizens, or what?
Yeah, the Hispanic vote is another place. It was really low. We've got two big areas, big population subgroups that we have to work on. One is the Hispanic vote, because it was around under 40%. I feel comfortable saying it was under 40%. And young voters, young voters, when you look at the groups that we get are 18 to 25, and then I think 26 to 35 or something like that. And in those two segments, it's a lot lower than in in older adults and even middle-aged adults. And we need to get the message out to them that why it's important to vote. And there's lots of reasons. Climate, women's rights. It's the future. It's their future, and their kids' education. So yeah, we need to do outreach, and and we need to make the partnerships, to be able to have an impact.
So I think we're about ready to close. I wanted to say two things, one of which I remember and one of which I don't. Okay, here's the one. Here's the one I didn't write down. When we had a candidate forum, I think it was for the primary, for the Democratic primary in 2022, we had a large number of people in the room, and it was recorded, and we had something like 500 and some views of the recording. And it seems to me that with this fabulous team that we have this kind of down to a fairly minorly filled with disaster, good production. We could make an effort with the party to make those recordings more available throughout the county, because, it's on, well, yeah, it's on Zoom, so it would have to be downloaded by the people's computer. But there's a lot of interest, and it's one thing to see a 30-second ad. It's another thing to see a half-hour session with questions and answers and that kind of thing. So we have to talk among ourselves to make sure we have the expertise to do that. But I think I'd like to.
That's an excellent idea. And yeah,
Oh.
I'm definitely open to, and those kinds of partnerships is exactly what we need to be
Right.
doing.
Especially with the potentially blue parts in the western part of the county where nobody goes. The candidates go to Siler City, but there are a lot of other Democrats out there too. The other thing I was going to say is that we are going to be at the Barrington Founders Festival in May, and we have a couple of interactive activities for people to do, but I'm also going to print out our page of contact information of all the president and all the way down to the dog catcher, or the water and soil person, and we'll have copies there. So anybody who wants a paper copy of all the contact information, come to the Farrington Fair on the 5th between 2 and 6. And who knew that it took a statistician and a public health person to generate all of this fabulous democratic activism? So thank you very much.